In 1950, Muchnick, one of the original promoters of the NWA and Thesz's booker, was named the new NWA President, a position to which he was unanimously re-elected and held until 1960, making him one of the longest-tenured presidents in the organization's history. Following the advent of television, professional wrestling matches began to be aired nationally during this time, reaching a larger audience than ever before. Rising demand and national expansion made wrestling a much more lucrative form of entertainment than in decades previous. This would be known as the Golden Age for the wrestling industry. From 1948 until 1955, each of the three major television networks broadcast wrestling shows, the largest supporter being the DuMont Television Network. In 1956, allegations were made that the NWA was an illegal monopoly blocking competition. An investigation led by the U.S. Department of Justice resulted in the NWA Consent Decree of 1956. Several promoters would leave the organization during this time, with some managing to find niches in the United States. In 1957, Montreal promoter Eddie Quinn walked out of the August NWA meeting in St. Louis, having fallen out with Muchnick over a number of issues. At the time Quinn walked out, a wrestler of his name Édouard Carpentier was involved in an angle where he and Lou Thesz were both being presented around the NWA as world champion after Carpentier had a disputed win over Thesz on June 14, 1957. As the 1950s came to a close, professional wrestling was losing television ratings, and soon TV stations dropped most wrestling shows from their lineups. The remaining televised wrestling promoters had small, local syndicated shows, which aired as late-night filler programming. Promoters started using localized television by purchasing airtime from rival territories, at the consequence of putting some of them out of business. On January 24, 1963, at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, Lou Thesz defeated Buddy Rogers in a one-fall match and was declared NWA World Heavyweight Champion for the third and final time. However, after the event, Vincent J. McMahon and DuMont from the Capital Wrestling Corporation promotion in the Northeast Territory refused to recognize the title change since Thesz as the NWA World Heavyweight Champion was not a strong draw in their territory. They then withdrew CWC from the NWA. As a result, McMahon and Mont formed the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, later to be known as WWE, with Rogers as its first world champion in April 1963. Although both Gainey and McMahon promoted their own world champions, their promotions continued to have representatives on the NWA board of directors and regularly exchanged talent with NWA promotions during this time. Wrestling's popularity continued to decline in the 1970s. The WWF quietly rejoined the NWA in 1971 after their biggest draw, Bruno Sammartino, left the promotion. While still an NWA member in 1979, they changed their name from Worldwide Wrestling Federation, the WWF, to World Wrestling Federation, the WWF. At some point during the decade, Muchnick reportedly declared Atlanta, Georgia as the leading wrestling city for its drawing capacity and near-capacity crowds at the City Auditorium or the Omni every Friday, while the American Wrestling Association, the AWA, and Worldwide Wrestling Federation / World Wrestling Federation both faltered during the 1970s. The NWA once again took over as the top promotion and gained huge dominance with their program, Georgia Championship Wrestling, which would become the first nationally broadcast wrestling program on cable television through then Superstation TBS in 1979. They brought in Gordon Solie, dubbed the Walter Cronkite of professional wrestling, from former NWA President Eddie Graham's Championship Wrestling from Florida Territory, to be lead commentator and host.